Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, February 4th, 2019. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic. It is, of course, National Signing Day week. National Signing Day will be Wednesday. I guess we'll call it the late signing period now, Dean. And a couple of things before we get rolling here. I want to let everybody know we're going to have a huge announcement on Bucknuts today at 10 a.m. Some of you might be listening to the show past 10 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, but so you can just check our site right now if you're listening to the show past 10 a.m. But if you're listening to the show before 10 a.m., we're going to have massive news on Bucknuts, really exciting stuff at 10 a.m., so make sure you check that out. We're going to start with the good news, Bill. Keep going with the good news. Defensive end Jack Sawyer for Pickerington North became the first commit in the 2021 class for the Buckeyes. This happened yesterday. He's a five-star recruit. Obviously a huge get. Tell the listeners a little bit about how this went down and just a little bit about Jack Sawyer, the player.
Well, it is absolutely huge. You know, if you project out, Dave, to the 2020, 2021 class, absolutely Jack Sawyer is, or was, I should say, now as high a priority as there was for Ohio State, you know, for several reasons. Number one, he's that good. I mean, he is a tremendous athlete, a great football player. I saw him this season play live, you know, in person. I believe 3 times, I think it was. And, you know, constantly he's getting double and triple teamed. He's being run away from. And, you know, the first few games of the season, you know, I think he had 6.5 sacks if I remember correctly, in the first 3 games. And then everybody figured out, better not run towards this guy anymore, and better double team him and triple team him. And, you know, Ohio State getting him at this point, just as Mark Pantoni would say, what a boom to the start of the 2021 recruiting class. And it was kind of interesting. I came down. I talked to Jack the day before because he had stopped at Ohio State quickly, and he told me that he was probably going to be deciding sooner rather than later. I didn't think that it would necessarily be that soon when he said soon, but it became very soon. And, you know, on Sunday, Jack called me and told me, hey, Mr. Kurelic, just want to give you a heads up. Some big news is coming here real soon. And then he told me, he said, I'm about to announce a commitment to Ohio State. And I said, whoa, you know, that's huge for the Buckeyes, Jack. And Ohio State has a great win to Jack Sawyer.
That's awesome. I love that he calls you Mr. Kurelic. He's a respectful young man, too.
That doesn't happen much since my teaching days of 25 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, that's soon he'll become. You know, he's going to start getting a little bit more confident. One day he's just going to call you and be like, "Hey, Dean, how you doing, Dean?" Just go straight to the nickname. So we got the good news. I don't want to say out of the way. We started with the good news. It was a great day yesterday, but let's talk about there's some bad news too. Obviously, with Doug Nestor, it feels like we've been talking about Doug Nestor for 5 years. And I know you changed your crystal ball to Virginia Tech, so did Steve Wiltfong and many other people that I trust profusely. So obviously bad news for the Buckeyes here that Doug Nestor looks like he is going to be a Hokie and not a Buckeye. What went wrong here? How much blame do you put on Greg Studrawa? I know Bill Green's been hammering stud. Just what are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, you know, you've talked about how long Doug Nestor has been, how long we've talked about Doug. And you know, I first saw Doug a number of years ago up in Cleveland. And since that time, I was very impressed by him, by the way, very, very impressed with him. And since that time, I've gotten to know him very, very well. You know, just an outstanding young man, a good football player and all. But I've been saying for quite some time, everybody's talking about Ohio State, Penn State, but don't count Virginia Tech out of this. I've written about it several times on our site, and when he committed to Ohio State, which was way back in August of 2017, he told me that while most people were talking about some of the other schools on his list, Alabama for one, actually Virginia Tech was his second choice. And I've always remembered that comment, and I've always realized that, hey, he does like Virginia Tech a lot. He obviously made a second official visit to Ohio State in mid-January. He then made one to Penn State. And this past weekend to Virginia Tech. I was talking to somebody close to the situation right before he made that official visit to Virginia Tech, and I just got the vibe from talking to that person that again, Virginia Tech seems like it's going to work out for them. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen, and which is why I switched my crystal ball on Sunday to Virginia Tech. I think he's going to sign with Virginia Tech come signing day, and I think there's several factors in that. Virginia Tech was always there. Again, that was his second choice when he picked Ohio State, and he's got some other connections there. This wasn't a Greg Studrawa problem. One of the reasons that he has highly considered staying with Ohio State is that Greg Studrawa is staying with Ohio State. But in the end, I think it's just a situation where he's going to feel he is like the more comfortable spot for him is Virginia Tech.
Interesting. So you're not down on Stud as a recruiter. I don't want you to trash him. I know that's not your style. He's a very nice man. Are you down on him as a recruiter, though? Can he do better?
I'm not down on him as a recruiter. Obviously, Ohio State has missed some guys, and their depth situation is a situation that they have to address. There's no question about that. But they've also got some outstanding players. I mean, and I know necessarily that Greg Studrawa was not always the lead recruiter, but he's still part of the equation when you get a Harry Miller, for instance. Ryan Day was huge in Harry Miller being a Buckeye, as was Urban Meyer at that time. But Harry Miller knew from the get-go that Greg Studrawa would be his coach at Ohio State, and Harry Miller was very happy that Greg Studrawa was staying at Ohio State. So that's an example of a great player. And, it's not really a question to me of Ohio State getting great offensive linemen, because they've got some great ones on the way. They've got Harry Miller. They've got Paris Johnson committed to Ohio State. They've got Luke Weipler committed to Ohio State, and so on. They just need to get more of them. It's not a question of quality, it's a question of quantity, and that's where Greg Studrawa and Kevin Wilson helps work with offensive line too, and they just got to get more of those linemen to shore up a depth problem, and we'll see how things go moving forward.
Well, let's close the show talking about two guys that they want to add either Wednesday or later this month. We'll talk about the young man they want to add later this month, Jonah Jackson. They would have liked to add him this weekend, but Jonah Jackson, the Rutgers transfer, grad transfer, will be eligible right away in 2019 for those that are not aware. He was honorable mention All Big Ten last year. He can play center. He can play guard. And he took an official visit to Ohio State over the weekend. He's also going to now go to Oklahoma. It sounds like it's down to Ohio State versus Oklahoma for Jonah Jackson. They would love to land him. That would be huge. Hey, maybe Stud can get back in the graces of the Bucknutters out there. We were calling for his head if he can land Jonah Jackson. Obviously Ohio State would have liked to lock this down this weekend. They didn't, but still, sounds like it's a two-team race. Just what are you hearing about Jonah Jackson?
Well, he'd be a great addition, and he's an interior. Everybody is clamoring for offensive tackles, and there is a need for offensive tackles, especially with the class of 2022. But Jonah Jackson is an interior lineman, and he is a very good one, and he's a guy that if he becomes a Buckeye, could step in right away, and I think would be expected pretty much to step in right away and play. I think Ohio State's got a pretty decent chance. He's not a kid that I would say, all right, he's going to be a Buckeye, but I think Ohio State's got a pretty decent chance of landing him right now. The spot he knows that, for instance, left guard is there for his potential taking if he becomes a Buckeye. My feeling is I would be leaning slightly right now to him becoming a Buckeye. We'll see what transpires here.
I hope that happens. The Buckeyes need to land him. That'd be huge. Maybe it's short-sighted, but I would even take that trade of 1 year of Jonah Jackson. Maybe I'll take that back. I guess 4 to 5 years of Doug Nestor probably would be better than 1 year of Jonah Jackson. But just looking at the short term, it would be huge for the 2019 Buckeyes to add Jonah Jackson. All right, last guy I want to ask you about, and we'll get you out of here. The young man from Hawaii, Enokk Vimahi. What is the latest on him? Sorry if I butchered his name. Enokk Vimahi. Sounds like it's down to Ohio State and USC. USC is in the lead. He's going to decide on Wednesday, or at least announce on Wednesday. What are you hearing?
That one to me is almost a flip of the coin. And that, in saying that, I think that's good for Ohio State. Who would have thought 3 or 4 weeks ago that it would be that close for Ohio State to get him? And I saw him in Texas in San Antonio, and he was very good. At that point, it was just kind of starting with Ohio State when he was in San Antonio. He's going to announce on Wednesday, and right now I really think that it's too close to call of what he's going to do. But, again, that's good news for Ohio State in that they are right there and have a legitimate shot on Wednesday of coming up with him.
Oh, Bill, and this almost slipped my mind, but I do want to get the latest on Dawand Jones. I want to ask you about another offensive lineman, a very offensive line-themed show here. Dawand Jones, the massive offensive tackle from Indianapolis. I don't want to act like he's just big. He's massive, 6'8", 360. Will he announce for the Buckeyes on Wednesday?
Well, he's another kid that really outstanding potential, and if he becomes a Buckeye, it'll be fun to see what Mick Marotti does with him. Mick Marotti is as good as it gets. He is the best, in my opinion, at what he does. And if he gets Dawand Jones, I think you're going to potentially see a very good college offensive lineman in Dawand Jones. And Dawand is, very much highly considering Ohio State. And right now I like the Buckeyes' chances, and I've liked their chances for some time with Dawand. I crystal balled him to Ohio State quite some time back, and I haven't changed that crystal ball pick, and right now I'm not planning to change it. We'll see what happens over the next few days. It's recruiting. Anything can happen, but I still feel good about my pick of Dawand Jones to Ohio State.
Great stuff from the dean of Ohio State football recruiting. I think he did 100 stories over the weekend, Bill Kurelic did, so he's just a typical weekend for Bill Kurelic, just cranking out 50 stories a day. But I appreciate your time, Dean, and thanks to our listeners out there for tuning into the show. Don't forget, huge announcement on Bucknuts today. We're so excited, 10 a.m. Be there and make sure you see it. So thanks again to the Dean, and thanks to all the listeners. Hope you have a great day. Let's have Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.